Venice, Italy, 1764. The canals are quiet, the city is asleep, but inside a palazzo on the eastern edge of the lagoon, a Venetian nobleman is sitting upright in his bed, eyes wide open, staring at a ceiling he can no longer stop seeing. He is exhausted in a way that has no name yet. His pillow is damp. His hands won't stop trembling. His valet has already changed the bed sheets twice tonight, soaked through with cold sweat each time. The man's wife has sent for a physician. The physician has no answers. Nobody does. Because what is happening inside this man's skull has never been documented in the history of medicine. He will not sleep tonight. He will not sleep tonight. He will not sleep tomorrow night. He will not sleep again. Not truly, not deeply, for the rest of his life. And the rest of his life is now measured in months. What killed him had no name in 1764. It had no name for 2 more centuries. It moved silently through his bloodline, passed from parent to child like an heirloom, like a curse written into the very architecture of the family's DNA. It would claim lives across generations before a single doctor thought to connect the deaths. And by the time science finally caught up with it, the family it chose as its host had already buried too many of their own. This is the story of Fatal Familial Insomnia, and it begins, as all the worst stories do, with a single, sleepless night. By the time the 1980s arrived, the disease had been circling this Italian family for over 200 years, quiet, patient, invisible. In 1984, a man named Silvano walked into a sleep clinic in Bologna, Italy. He was in his early 50s. He sat down across from the neurologist, and he said something that no patient had ever quite said before. He told the doctor that he knew exactly what was about to happen to him. He had watched it happen to his father. He'd watched it happen to his sister. And now he could feel it beginning, the slow withdrawal of sleep, like a tide going out and never coming back. Silvano had perhaps 8 months left to live. He knew this. He donated his brain to science before he died. That single act of courage, choosing to be studied rather than simply mourned, is the reason we understand this disease at all today. The records indicate that Silvano first lost the ability to reach deep sleep. Stage 3, Stage 4, the slow restorative stages where the body repairs itself and the brain consolidates memory, simply vanished. He could doze. He could drift, but he could never go under. Over weeks, even those shallow fragments of sleep disappeared entirely. What followed was documented in precise clinical detail. Hallucinations, confusion, a body continuing to function in some mechanical sense while a mind began to lose its footing completely. Scientists observed that Silvano's autonomic nervous system, the system that regulates heart rate, temperature, and blood pressure, began to disintegrate. He sweated constantly. His pupils shrank to pinpoints. His body could no longer regulate itself because his brain had lost the ability to tell it how. He died in 1984. His brain traveled to a laboratory, and what researchers found inside it changed the course of neuroscience. The findings were eventually published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1986. The paper described, for the first time in recorded medical literature, a hereditary prion disease of the thalamus, a disease so rare, so precise in its cruelty, that it seemed almost engineered. Only around 500 people on Earth, spread across roughly 30 families, carry the genetic mutation responsible for it. They do not all know they carry it. Some choose not to find out. To understand what kills these people, you have to understand the thalamus. Sit with this for a moment. Your brain is an extraordinarily complex machine, and like any machine, it has a control room. The thalamus is that control room. Think of it as a switchboard operator sitting at the center of your skull, fielding millions of calls every second, routing sensory information, managing consciousness, and most critically, managing the transition between wakefulness and sleep. Every night, when you close your eyes and the world goes soft, it is the thalamus that dims the lights. It tells the cortex to quieten down. It tells the nervous system to stand down. It is the gatekeeper of rest. Now imagine that switchboard operator has been replaced by a biological glitch, a rogue signal that keeps every line open, every light on, every alarm bell ringing. Not because there is danger, simply because the system no longer knows how to stop. That glitch has a name. It is called a prion. A A prion is not a virus. It is not a bacterium. It carries no DNA of its own. It is, in the most unsettling sense, simply a protein, a normal, harmless protein that has folded itself into the wrong shape. And like a persuasive rumor in a crowd, it moves through the brain, converting healthy proteins around it into the same wrong shape. One becomes two. Two become four. The cascade is silent and slow and completely unstoppable with any tool medicine currently possesses. In Fatal Familial Insomnia, those misfolded prions target the thalamus with a specificity that researchers still find remarkable. They accumulate, they destroy. Small holes begin to form in the tissue, visible under a microscope, devastating in consequence. Scientists describe the affected brain tissue as resembling a sponge. The technical term is Spongiform degeneration. The human term is simply the lights go out, one room at a time, and the switchboard operator can no longer do his job. The person stops sleeping. The body continues its biological panic response, heart racing, temperature dysregulating, hormones surging, because the system that should be telling it to rest has been permanently overridden. The brain is running full throttle with no off switch, no fuel left. A rare biological anomaly, yes, but also, in a clinical sense, one of the most complete failures a human nervous system can experience. The entire process, from first symptom to death, typically spans between 7 and 36 months. There is no treatment. There is no cure. There is, at present, no way to stop the protein once it begins to fold. What Silvano's donated brain gave the world was not a cure. It gave the world a question, and that question turned out to be one of the most important in modern neuroscience. Why does the human body need sleep at all? For most of recorded history, sleep was considered a passive state, the brain simply switching off, the body idling. Silvano's case, and the research that followed it, helped dismantle that assumption entirely. Scientists studying fatal familial insomnia began to map exactly what collapsed when sleep was permanently removed. Memory formation failed, hormonal regulation collapsed, the immune system deteriorated. The autonomic nervous system came apart at the seams. The brain, deprived of its nightly maintenance window, began to consume itself. What emerged from this research was a new understanding. Sleep is not passive. Sleep is when the brain does its most critical work. It is when cerebrospinal fluid flushes through the neural pathways, clearing out the metabolic waste that accumulates during waking hours. It is when memories are sorted, filed, and consolidated. It is when the immune system recalibrates, when the hormonal cycle resets, when the very structure of the brain is preserved. Fatal familial insomnia didn't just kill its patients. It demonstrated, in the starkest possible terms, that without sleep, the human brain cannot survive. Not for months. Not ultimately for weeks. This one family, this one bloodline, carrying its quiet curse from a Venetian palazzo in 1764 to a clinic in Bologna in 1984, taught the scientific community something that billions of dollars of research had not yet proven so completely. Sleep is not a luxury. It is not a habit. It is not a lifestyle choice. It is the biological maintenance cycle on which every other system in your body depends. Remove it, and the machine does not slow down. It burns. Silvano is gone. The Venetian nobleman whose name was never recorded is long gone. But somewhere in Italy tonight, a person who carries this mutation is probably asleep, perhaps unaware of what moves through their genes, perhaps choosing not to know, living their life in the ordinary grace of unconsciousness that the rest of us surrender without a second thought. Close your eyes tonight and think about that. Not with fear, with something rarer than fear, with gratitude. Because the quiet act of falling asleep, something you will do tonight without effort, without ceremony, without any awareness of the machinery running behind it, is the thing that one family in the world has spent 260 years being slowly robbed of. Their tragedy is now written into the scientific record. Their suffering, in the most meaningful sense possible, was not wasted. Rest well. You have been given something they were not.